Jump in on today's topic, mental health. So what I'm going to do with this, for this particular topic, I'm going to start, I'll start by sharing with you. You guys gave absolutely phenomenal feedback, insights on the struggles that you're dealing with as it relates to mental health, as well as some of the things that you found helpful for yourself that really work for you to mitigate some of these issues. So I'll give you, I just want to give you a little bit of insight on some of the things that I've been dealing with as well. So I've certainly felt claustrophobic, without a doubt. I've absolutely felt claustrophobic, even though thankfully I'm in a home, my own home. It's spacious, but at the same time, when you're restricted, when you're living in a lockdown environment, and the whole coronavirus situation, and which is a recurring theme, by the way, for everyone, just the simplest things like going to the supermarket are not an option anymore. The simplest things like running out for a coffee at Starbucks, or grabbing a pizza, or getting together with friends is a challenge. You start wondering, am I even allowed to go outside to even walk the dog? That feeling of feeling claustrophobic, I don't care how big, how spacious, how glamorous your living conditions might be, you're still going to feel claustrophobic. I've definitely, at times, I have definitely felt that myself. I've also felt very stressed just about the financial impact of the current environment. So, and I think really this is a very common issue that many people are struggling with, whether you want to admit it or not. Even if you are lucky enough to still have your job, the concern that, is my job going to disappear? Are layoffs coming? Am I going to get furloughed? Is the company going to close down? Is the industry that I'm in safe? And just not knowing, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to pay rent? How am I going to buy groceries? That is a very real struggle for me as a Salesforce consultant. Most of my clients, first of all, I have clients in practically every industry, manufacturing and financial services and healthcare, home healthcare, education, nonprofits. I could keep going on and on. Regardless of the industry that they're in, practically every single industry is either one of two things: either directly impacted from everything that's been going on with coronavirus, or even if they're not directly impacted, there is some concern, some hesitation in spending money. Everyone is adopting a more conservative approach, and that holds true. Hopefully you don't hear it. That's my dog insisted, because the gardeners are nearby. Dog insisted on being next to me, so she's in the room with me on this side, and hopefully using the Crisp app, you don't hear her barking or anything. So I'm going to try to ignore it. Anyway, so companies are being very conservative, and when it comes to spending on anything, let alone anything that's not mission critical. So anything associated with Salesforce, even if it's an open, what would otherwise be a mission critical project, very often those projects are either scaled back or put on pause, or an updated budget has been applied to it. So I personally have found that for most of my clients, any initiatives associated to Salesforce have fallen into one of those categories, either completely put on hold, or scaled back. And within the clients' organizations themselves, they're also dealing with the exact same issues: the stresses, the loss of productivity of being at home with everyone else there, or trying to figure out, how am I going to educate, how am I going to get my kids through their school situation, how am I going to be in a work environment when I don't have those distractions of everyone else at home, and that everyone's concerned about their own health. So the exact same things that all of us are dealing with, for me, I'm finding that my clients are dealing with the exact same thing, which results in sort of narrowing down the focus, really, for everyone in terms of what they're going to do. So that impacts me as a Salesforce consultant in terms of the financial impact of the current situation. How is that going to impact me and impact my income, my ability to support my family? So I've definitely struggled with that. Feeling disconnected from the Salesforce community and from clients. I mean, things like Trailhead DX or local. Let me let the dog out so she doesn't make me crazy. All right, I just don't need that distraction. Let her out of the room. Feeling disconnected from the Salesforce user groups as a user group leader, just even not being able to host user groups, not being able to attend user group meetups, things like Trailhead DX or World Tours or anything else. All of those have gone virtual, and it's just not the same. As much as you attend virtual events, it's not the same as the type of networking, the camaraderie, the back and forth that we have when interacting with other people. So that definitely has impacted me, and just feeling a sense of being disconnected. There's also the concern, just from a health perspective, the concern for the health of myself, of my family, of my loved ones who are not living with me, and that's an overriding, I'll describe it as like a dark cloud that's just there all the time. And as I mentioned to you guys before, I just had a granddaughter, so even when everything about coronavirus came into play and my daughter was very pregnant, we were concerned because nobody really knows what the impact of coronavirus is on pregnant women. We were super concerned about her getting it, and what's the impact going to be, and what's the impact going to be on the baby. So just this ongoing concern is a thread that has started with this whole coronavirus thing and really is not ending, because there is no vaccine, and nobody knows, even if here my entire family had it, no scientist, no doctor can tell us if that actually means that we're immune, and if we're immune from what and for how long. So in a way, it doesn't even mean anything other than the fact that, okay, thankfully we survived the horrible experience. But there's the overriding concern of health for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones, for parents, for the elders within your family. And are they okay? Are they exposed? Are they being responsible from a social distancing perspective? That takes a toll on you from a stress perspective. The stress of the state of affairs, of just what's going on in the world. Just watching the news. I have found that for myself, I'm a little bit of a news junkie, generally speaking, and just the stress of watching what's going on in the news, what's going on from the politics perspective, or what's not happening from a politics perspective. Incredibly stressful, at least for me. Insanely stressful, and I know a lot of people share in that stress, but for myself, it causes a lot of stress. Just feeling a sense of lack of control. And this is really an overriding thing. Not that I necessarily feel the need to be a control freak, but with this situation, most of us, and I know, again, speaking for myself, feel a lack of control. I have no control over my health. I have no control over my safety or safety of my loved ones. No control over my income, like I talked about before. The inability to socialize, and even the simplest things like going to get groceries is now a huge challenge. So feeling just the lack of control of everything. It's like you have to use way more brain cell activity to even think about the simplest thing. Okay, I got a check in the mail today. Was I even allowed to open the envelope? Am I allowed to even touch? Do I have to wipe my hands with Purell or wash my hands now just because I touched the envelope? Let alone, how am I going to go to the bank to deposit it? And when I go to the ATM machine and start pressing the buttons, am I supposed to wear gloves? And then what do I do with the gloves? And what if I accidentally, after I touch the gloves, I also touch my wallet to get the ATM card out? And do I have to wipe down the ATM card with Purell? There's a lot of stress that all of us are dealing with all of this, because nobody really knows what the appropriate protocol is for even the simplest things that we take for granted just for everyday life. Disruption, again, issues that I've been dealing with myself. Disruption with what would otherwise be considered normal social celebrations. This could be anything from celebrating someone's graduation, or Mother's Day, or someone's birthday. Can't tell you how many milestone birthdays have happened within my family over the last couple of months where there was no gathering of any kind. There was no party. It ended up being a Zoom celebration of some kind, or even celebrating someone's birth. I'm not even talking about my granddaughter, just other people have had a baby, and I would otherwise just go and visit and see the baby, see the parents, see the family, and you can't do any of that. And even trying to coordinate that through Zoom, like, how do you even coordinate that? And honestly, what do you even talk about? Just the whole social interaction is just really, really different. And let alone, there are things like weddings, there are bar bat mitzvahs. I can't even tell you how many bar mitzvahs, and also just funerals I've attended through Zoom over the last couple of months. It's a little insane when you think about it, and it's really it's disruptive, and it's stressful. It's very, very stressful. Let alone what is the appropriate protocol? How are you even supposed to be dressed? What are you supposed to talk about or not talk about during these things? The next item that I've been stressed about is just feeling, how can I be productive in this new world that we're hopefully very temporarily living in, but it's lingering for quite some time, where how do I be productive when there's complete disruption to the typical workday every single day? How do I stay productive? And I saw from the feedback that you guys gave, a lot of you can relate to a lot of, if not all, of these things that I'm calling out. Let alone family members who want my attention, which ends up distracting me from being able to even just make sense of everything that I just talked about. So if I'm concerned over, health, safety, how am I going to get the groceries, and what if they don't have paper towels at the supermarket, or they ran out of milk, or seeing an article online that there's going to be, let's say, a meat shortage, and great. So what happens if by the time I actually get to the supermarket and I'm wearing the mask and I'm wearing the gloves and they're out of whatever it is that I want to get, or there's a limit of how much I can get and I really don't want to. It's not that I'm looking to stockpile on any of these things, or I'm not a hoarder of any kind, but I really don't want to be making this trek out to the supermarket again in a couple of days. So I want to buy enough of whatever it is, maybe just put it in the freezer, so to limit the amount of times that I have to venture out of the house. But then the supermarket has a limit of how many of this particular item you can actually purchase. So you're trying to think through all of these things, and then you have family members, household members that you're living with that just want your attention in some way, and it's disruptive because now you can't even follow up with that thought process to even try and figure it out, even though you don't even have a perfect solution. So it ends up being just even disruptive to the thought process of trying to prepare yourself of how do I tackle this thing. Next is just even worried about loved ones who are not living with you. So I mentioned before, for example, worrying about elders, so my parents live about an hour away from me, and I have no idea whether or not they're actually social distancing. And then I hear that, let's say, even when coronavirus first started, I happened to be on the phone with my mom, and my mom is talking to someone, and I hear her saying, "Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for all your help. Great. I'll see you next week." And I'm like, "Who are you talking to? Who was that?" And she says, "We had a cleaning girl. She comes once a week." I'm like, no, you can't have a cleaning girl come. You don't know if she's been exposed, and she's going to be exposing you. And my mother says, "No, don't worry. I'm going to wipe down everything that she touched with a Clorox wipe." How are you possibly going to do that? Everything that she touched, every doorknob, every what? Every surface of every counter, that makes absolutely no sense. So there's stress also just about your loved ones who are not living with you. Also, I might have mentioned this, and I did mention it before. I have a son who's 22 years old who's living overseas. He's living in Israel, and just worried about how is he managing through all of this in terms of school, in terms of him getting groceries, and just managing day-to-day life, where he is not able to socialize and feeling isolated, and sort of feeling like he's in his own prison, just living in his apartment. So there's definitely a lot of stress associated with just concern over your loved ones who are just not with you. Also, not even knowing, this might sound ridiculous, but not even knowing if we actually have coronavirus. Now, this might sound absurd, so I'm going to explain a little bit. So initially, my entire family, we took everything about coronavirus very seriously. Mid-March, basically, we self-quarantined in our home. my wife, my kids, my daughter who's married with my son-in-law. And sure enough, about a week or two later, some family members started getting symptoms, and one or two family members got tested and they were positive. And then when the rest of us started getting symptoms and we called the doctor, basically the doctor said, oh, if you're living with other family members who've tested positive for coronavirus and have the symptoms, don't bother getting tested. Basically, we're not wasting a test on you. Just assume that you have it. And okay, that's fine. Like, whatever. We're just dealing with the symptoms. And the truth is, there is no cure. There is no real approach to mitigating the coronavirus, even if you have it. So it's not like the treatment is different if you've tested positive or not. So, okay, that was fine. So we all dealt with it and we've all recovered. Great. Now, let's fast forward to antibody testing. So in the area where I live in northern New Jersey, has been a major cluster of coronavirus incidents. So they're also taking very seriously and making it widely available in terms of antibody testing. So different family members went to get tested for antibodies. Actually, all of my family members went to get tested for antibodies. And I initially signed up along with the rest of my family to go get tested. And then basically I was told, because I got coronavirus last in my family, I was told that I don't qualify for antibody testing because, this was a couple of weeks ago, because the last day that I had symptoms was too close to the date when I would get tested for antibodies. So basically what they want is from the last day that you had any symptoms, they need a gap of, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks of no symptoms whatsoever before you can go for antibody testing. So for me, because I had it last, my symptoms were too close to that antibody testing date. Fine. So the rest of the family went to get tested for antibodies. Everyone else has antibodies. Turns out, by the way, I went to get tested mid last week. I just found out yesterday that I do in fact have antibodies. But on Friday, just this past Friday, my daughter goes to give birth and she goes into the hospital. And standard protocol, when anyone comes into the hospital to give birth, they test her for coronavirus. Now keep in mind, she had coronavirus. She had all the symptoms. She got tested afterwards she recovered. She got tested for antibodies later. She has antibodies. So she goes to the hospital last Friday to give birth, and they do a coronavirus test, and she comes back positive, positive for coronavirus. She's like, what? How's that? No, that's not possible. She doesn't have any symptoms or anything. And basically they shrug it off saying, okay, well, could be it's a false positive, whatever, but the rest of your family, especially if after you give birth, you leave the hospital, you're going to be going back to your family, the rest of the family should get tested also. And she's like, what? But they all have antibodies. Like, that doesn't make any sense. The only person, at the time, I had just gotten tested for antibodies. I didn't get the results yet. The only person who actually took a coronavirus test and tested negative was my father. Because myself, I got tested. Doctor wanted to know if I still had it. This goes back about a month ago. And it came back negative. So I knew that, okay, I was hopefully done with coronavirus. And we all went on Friday. My wife was like, oh, well, I'm not delaying anything. We're all going to get coronavirus testing. So we all went to get tested again for coronavirus. Turns out it all came back negative. But just this stress of like, wait a minute, do we have it or don't we have it? Did we recover or didn't we recover? And by the way, even the antibody test, nobody knows if it even means anything. Nobody knows. Nobody can tell us if that actually means that we have any immunity of any kind. So just the stress of not knowing any of this stuff is monumental. It casts this additional layer of stress on our day-to-day lives, even though this particular topic is not necessarily top of mind 24/7. It's just one of many, many other things that are adding stress to everyday life. So those are the things that I've been stressed with. Let's talk about some of the things that have worked for me. And I know that what I'm going to say will resonate with a lot of you because there's a similarity. There's a lot of overlap between what I'm about to say and the things that you've suggested that have worked for you. So for myself, I personally have found that creating some kind of daily routine and sticking with it helps dramatically. And I was not so good about keeping this daily routine at the onset. At first, it was sort of like, I guess I probably none of us had a real routine initially, because even if you had a regular routine, so for me, like I've been working from home for many years, so I've had a regular routine in terms of how I go about approaching my day. But at the same time, if the rest of the family is there and the rest of the family is also, oh wait, they're new to Zoom. How do I log into Zoom? How do I mute myself? If I'm the host of a meeting, how do I mute others in Zoom? So they're coming to me with questions, with issues, with concerns. Oh wait, what are we having for lunch? We ran out of milk. Who's going to go get milk? Well, are we allowed to get milk? So there are all of these disruptions that happen throughout the course of the day. Sort of, I guess it really had to happen, but to sort of figure out what is the right normal. And because we've been going through this for quite some time, at one point I was like, okay, those new issues to get us comfortable with the current situation, like hopefully we've passed that point, and now I can actually implement some type of daily routine. So I would say really only within the last 2 to 3 weeks I've implemented for myself a daily routine, which includes trying to go to bed at 10:30 at night, and trying to start my day at 5:45 in the morning is when my first alarm goes off. And that also includes things like actually working out every day, not just thinking about working out, but actually exercising every day. Because guess what? The nonstop, just stressful eating and the sedentary lifestyle of working from home and being at your desk all the time and not being able to go to the gym and not being able to go out to do anything takes a toll on you. And in the end, none of my clothing was fitting. So I'm like, yeah, I got to start working out again. So I started working out every day and taking it very seriously. Going hand in hand with that, eating healthy. The stressful eating, and I think everyone has gone through this, is just the stress eating of whatever happens to be in the pantry. Oh, you made pasta? Yeah, maybe I'll finish half the pot myself. I think all of us have gone through that. But instead, sort of like being stricter on myself in terms of eating, not only eating healthy, but also eating some normal meals instead of just inhaling whatever happens to be around. At the same time, we've talked about this quite a bit earlier in the week, as it relates to going outside, just having a change of pace, change of scenery, fresh air, getting a little bit of sunshine, going outside several times a day, even if it's only for a few minutes, helps dramatically. And putting that into a daily schedule, so what time you're starting your day, what you're going to do before your workday starts, planning out your meals, even if it's not necessarily what you're going to eat, but when you're going to be eating, planning all of that out and actually making it happen. That starts to give you some sense of structure within which you can work around for some of the other things that you come across throughout the course of the day. At the same time, I've been managing multiple checklists and to-do lists so if I happen to be on the elliptical machine and I realize, oh wait, I got to pay the whatever bill, I will either put it in the form of with a pen and paper, or using my mobile device, I'll add it into one of many different apps that I use to manage checklist, or at the very least I'll use dictation Siri on my phone or my watch to say in 45 minutes remind me to pay the whatever bill. So to do things like that, it will help me. If I'm not able to do it at that moment, it will help me to mitigate those things and help make sure that things aren't slipping through the cracks, that I'm actually on top of those things that I have to be on top of. At the same time, going hand in hand with the to-do list and the checklist, giving myself a little bit of leeway. Because let's face it, it's very stressful, this entire experience. It has a direct impact on our ability to be productive in this world that we're living in. And we can't be so hard on ourselves, and we have to give ourselves a little bit of leeway. Okay, if I didn't necessarily pay the bill today and I end up doing it tomorrow, so long as I don't get financially penalized by it, whatever, it'll get paid tomorrow. So you have to give yourself a little bit of leeway when it comes to these things in terms of missed deadlines. And honestly, because most of our clients and those we're interacting with are dealing with the same thing, most people understand, and it's okay. So if, let's say, you promised someone, hey, I'll get back to you with whatever it is by Tuesday, end of day, and for whatever reason it doesn't hurt, give yourself a break. just be transparent about it. Tell the person, hey, is it okay if I get it to you by Wednesday afternoon? Usually in this world, everyone is a little bit more understanding because they're going through the same crap that we are. So give yourself some space there. One of the other things that I found has helped me dramatically is limiting my consumption of the news. I mentioned this before. Generally speaking, I'm a little bit of a news junkie. I have shortcuts like everywhere to different news sources just to see what's going on in the world, what's going on in the technology world, what's going on in the Salesforce ecosystem, and realizing that the more I read the news, the more I'm stressed over what's going on in the world, especially what's going on within the last week in the world, just limiting my consumption of the news. So I'm not completely burying my head in the sand, but you know what? I am only going to look at the news during certain breaks. Maybe it's during those breaks when I'm taking the walk outside. Maybe it's only when I'm on the elliptical machine. Whatever it is, and not consistently throughout the course of the day, because otherwise it's going to be majorly disruptive to anything else I'm trying to accomplish. I won't be able to focus on the meeting that I'm in, the important business meeting that I'm in, or the email that I need to craft because I'm thinking about what I just read in the news. So limiting it for myself has worked dramatically. As I mentioned before, not only working out, but also while working out, I sort of have a list. I have a list for everything. I'm a huge fan of checklists, by the way. So I have a list of things to do while I'm on the elliptical machine or while I'm working out. What I mean by that is like things to watch. So, for example, if I happen to come across, let's say I'm online at the supermarket and I only have a couple of minutes and I happen to be looking, I'm a huge fan of YouTube, by the way. So if I'm looking at YouTube and some of the channels that I subscribe to, or some of the videos that YouTube is recommending to me, I certainly don't have time to be watching those videos when I'm online at the supermarket. Like I'm next up online. So all I do is I go ahead and I put it in a watch later playlist, so that when I'm on the elliptical machine, I will be hitting play. I'm watching some of those things that I put in that particular playlist. I also have certain either movies or series through whether it's Netflix or Amazon Prime that to sort of like remind myself these are the what I'll call healthy distractions to keep myself entertained or educated or inspired while doing other things where it's okay to multitask. And I dedicate a lot of that kind of stuff to the time when I'm on the elliptical machine. I find that really works very well for me. It also helps me get through that time that I'm on the elliptical machine, that I'm not bored to tears the entire time. The next thing that I found that it helps for me is being engaged in the Salesforce community through social media. Again, it's not at all the same thing as going to live events and interacting with people and hugging people in person. But staying engaged in the Salesforce community on social media. So what does this mean for those of you who don't necessarily follow me on social media? And I'm not asking for followers on social media. I happen to be a social media addict. So whether it is Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn or the Salesforce Trailblazer community, every once in a while, I take a peek and see what's going on over there, and I engage with other people, not just for the sake of engaging. It's to actually have connections with people, see what someone might be struggling with. Maybe I can help them, see what kind of insights, maybe someone has a best practice, a tip, a new app, a new way of doing things that I might be able to learn from. The same kinds of things that I would typically get through an in-person Salesforce meetup. I can actually get some version of that through social media. I find that helps dramatically. I've also found for myself, in terms of feeling that sense of feeling productive and to address the loneliness and the socialization, doing live events similar to this one that we're doing now. I found that for me, hosting these live events helps me feel so. generally speaking, they bring me zero revenue whatsoever. They do take time to set up, to plan. They do take time to even create the landing page, the registration page, and the confirmation email, and the reminder email. It takes a lot of time. I'm not generating any revenue whatsoever by doing all of that. But it is allowing me to feel productive, to feel connected, to feel that I'm giving back, to feel that I'm helping others by sharing of the knowledge and sharing any insights and allowing people to connect with each other and to connect with me. And I find that that helps me in a dramatic way. And by the way, even if you aren't about to take on any of those things, I've seen people that do something similar where they just open up a Zoom meeting and maybe they'll just go on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn in advance and say, hey, I'm hosting just like a coffee chat at 8 p.m. tonight Eastern, and here's a link to the Zoom meeting to join, or let me know if you're interested and I'll private message you the link to the Zoom meeting. And you could just, so anyone can do this on their own. You don't need to follow the same type of structure or anything else that I do. But for me, I found this to help dramatically for myself in terms of just feeling productive and efficient, and that there's a purpose to my day. Also, proactively reaching out to family and friends just to catch up. And by the way, a lot of times I'll do this when I'm taking that walk outside, when I'm grabbing the leash and taking the dog outside for the 5, 10, 15-minute walk in between meetings. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll pick up the phone and call a friend, call one of my parents, call someone, and just connect with them. How are you doing? How are you managing with everything? How's everything with work? How's the health of everyone in the family? And just have that connecting time while walking the dog, while enjoying the sunshine, enjoying the fresh air. I found that that helps tremendously, even if it's only for a couple of minutes. It doesn't have to be all that long. Now, one additional element that I just want to call out, yes, Jackie, YouTube, I completely, I love it. I totally love it. I'm a huge YouTube fan. So one other element that you guys can adopt in, or some version of it that works for you. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Jewish, I'm observant, so I'm Sabbath observant, which means from Friday night sundown until Saturday night sundown, so essentially 24, 25 hours every single week, I am essentially offline. So any posts that you might see happening on my account on like Twitter or LinkedIn, etc., they are all completely automated. I am not actually doing them whatsoever. I am totally offline from Friday night sundown until Saturday night after it gets dark. And that's Sabbath time for me. And essentially that means that I'm disconnected from everything else online. I'm disconnected from work. And what that means for me is I am exclusively connected with the members of my household. I am exclusively connected with my neighbors, which means we're hanging out and we're socially distancing. Let's put it this way: outside of a coronavirus situation, typically in my household on a Friday night and Saturday lunch, first of all, we are hosting the equivalent of like a stereotypical Thanksgiving dinner, usually like a large meal with friends and family over, where we're connecting. Nobody is holding their phone whatsoever. Everyone is chit-chatting and sometimes playing board games or doing puzzles or reading a book, and that type of old-fashioned just talking and connecting with each other in real time. Now with coronavirus, we can't have any guests whatsoever, which is, by the way, that's very disruptive too, because we typically have a lot of people. We do a lot of hosting. We typically have a lot of people over. So just being disconnected from the outside world while at the same time focusing my attention on family, on my neighbors. So yes, even like walking the dog, we're still staying 6 feet apart. They're standing in their driveway, I'm standing in my driveway, and having a conversation, and how are you guys doing, and how's everyone, what's going on, etc. Just being connected in that way, while at the same time like I mentioned before, catching up on reading books and playing games and sleeping. I am catching up on a lot of sleep during that time. It is freaking awesome. So even though I'm doing it for religious reasons, and this is something I've always done my entire life, that's really like all I know, to whatever extent you find it helpful and useful. I'm telling you that for myself, having nothing to do with religion, for me, that gives me like a balance. This is something that I'm looking forward to the entire week. I am looking forward to the weekend where I know things are going to be quiet. I don't have to look at my inbox. I am not looking at any text messages. I am not looking at the news. It's exclusive for this type of connectivity with people in real life, and that's it. So to whatever extent you find that helpful, you can feel free to adopt it as you see fit. Again, having nothing to do with religion. So that definitely helps me in a major way. So now let's shift gears and talk a little bit about some of the struggles and everything that you guys have mentioned. And there's a lot of overlap over here. So Andrea, Janet, Lynette, and Jackie mentioned feeling disconnected and not being able to spontaneously like stop by at a friend's desk to see how they're doing. All very, very real. Jackie also mentioned feeling disconnected from clients who aren't as responsive as they used to be. Oh my God, I am feeling that big time. So I am completely with you. Where, reaching out to a client about something, let's say they asked you a question and you're responding to them, and it's suddenly taking way longer for them to even acknowledge that you answered their question. It's just like, hello, am I talking to a doorknob? Do you hear me? So I totally, like, these are very real struggles. Jackie, Lacey, and Andrea mentioned not feeling motivated, not feeling as productive as normal, and even the simplest tasks seem to be very overwhelming. I can relate to this in a major way. So I'm going to give you some very real examples that I've been dealing with just even over the last 12 hours, okay? So I've purchased a whole bunch of different things, odds and ends, nonsense stuff from Amazon that needed to get returned. So, for example, when I say like nonsense things, my reading glasses, I accidentally broke my reading glasses about a month or two ago when coronavirus essentially started. And I'm like, oh, damn, I really like those reading glasses. I went onto Amazon and how the heck do you buy reading glasses through Amazon? So, like, how do you know if they're going to fit, if they're going to look right, whatever. So I bought a bunch of different kinds of reading glasses on Amazon. And, of course, I'm doing the, fashion show for my daughters and my wife, who are like, yep, no. Anyway, so I had a whole bunch of reading glasses that I needed to return from Amazon. Again, nothing that's a big deal. So I processed the return. For some of them, I actually went onto the Amazon account to say, okay, I want to return it. And I printed up the label, and I basically just had it sitting in a cardboard box on the top of a cabinet by the front door. And it was taking forever for me to find. All I had to do was throw it into a cardboard box and just drop it off at Staples so it can actually go back to Amazon. It's been sitting there for a while, and just yesterday my 16-year-old is like, when are you going to finally return all of that junk to Amazon? And sure enough, one of the things that I wanted to return, it already passed the expiration date when Amazon won't let me return it. I'm going to take that up another time. But my point is that's something that's very simple. It did not require a lot of time. It did not require a lot of brain cell activity. There was no emotions tied to this simple task. But because it involved leaving the house and, okay, gloves and a mask and going into Staples, and are they open regular business hours, and I have other things that are more important to do, it was not at the top of my priority list. Finally, yesterday, I took care of it, by the way. At least those things that Amazon actually let me return, I'll deal with another time. Those things that pass the expiration date for Amazon to return. I'll give you another very simple one. It's annoying me. It's my own fault. So I have some light switches. So by the way, throughout my entire house, being the technology geek that I am, throughout my entire house, I have smart switches, where today it's way more common. When I installed them 10 years ago, it wasn't nearly as common. Basically, every single switch in the entire house is connected to a wireless system where through any mobile device or any browser, I can turn things on and off. I can set up all kinds of automation and things. And I do have automation that, like, Starting 10 o'clock at night. Basically, I call it like a nighttime mode, where starting 10 o'clock at night, top of the hour, every hour, key lights throughout the entire house are basically automatically turned off. By the way, what this does, I don't mean to go on a tangent, what this does is it essentially is a silent reminder to everyone in the family, time to start winding down for bed. And it's okay, they can go to the light switch if they're in a room and the main light goes off. They can go to the wall and just flick it back on. That's fine, because top of the hour, the next hour, it's going to happen again. It's going to automatically get turned off. Anyway, some of these light switches have died on me. And I actually have replacement switches. I have a handful of replacement switches, because when one of them dies, it's annoying to have to go online and buy one of these special switches that are compatible with the rest of the system. And so I have them. I have a bunch of light switches spread throughout the house that have died over the last couple of months. And it's simply taking me forever. It's on every single checklist that I've ever written. Oh yeah, that's something I got to do today, something I got to do by end of day tomorrow, is replace these stupid switches. How long does it take? It probably takes 5 or 10 minutes, but it's not at the top of my priority list, as annoying as it is. Some of these switches, they're just dead. In other words, like, let's say at the kitchen table, there's the light right above the kitchen table. It just does not work. Now, we're not sitting in complete darkness. There are other lights in the room, like we're managing, but something simple, something annoying. So that feeling of not feeling as productive as we normally are, I completely get it. I'm living with it too. But at the same time, I'm giving myself some leeway. Like, okay, it's not the end of the world. Yes, I'll do it. And like, finally, I'll do it. Thankfully, some of my daughters are nagging me about some of these things also, so it gets done. Next, feeling that other people's expectations on delivery, Lacey mentioned this, feeling that other people's expectations on delivery of certain things are a little bit off, they're inaccurate, leading to a little bit more stress and anxiety. So if people who basically, they ask you to do something and they expect it to be done within that hour or by end of day, and for various reasons you can't do it. Most often it's because we have booked ourselves up on our calendar, and that's why we don't have time to do these things. This is very real. So Lacey, I am completely with you on this one. Janet mentioned feeling invisible. That gives a lot of stress. We talked about this as it relates to working with others, and this could be incredibly stressful. Yes, and by the way, there are a lot of things, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more on Friday, which, by the way, leads into a course that I will be offering, and I'm going to be offering half off price for you guys if you're interested in doing it. I'll be offering a course on personal branding, and feeling invisible is completely addressed through that, plus a lot of other things, and just in terms of managing your Salesforce career through personal branding, which it's a much larger topic. We'll unpack that a little bit more on Friday, but for now, let's just acknowledge the stress that comes along with feeling invisible. And yes, and that's something that really, for your own, not only mental health, but from a career management perspective, it definitely needs to be addressed. And the good thing is that there are many, many different ways that we can address feeling invisible without making ourselves crazy. So again, we'll touch more on that on Friday. Kathy mentioned being worried about other family members, which I mentioned earlier. Yeah, I totally get that. Even the simplest thing, Kathy mentioned, even the simplest thing like going grocery shopping now takes on a whole new meaning, and it's so complicated. Totally agree. Like I mentioned before with the Amazon returns, or even replacing the light switches. Yes. Kathy also mentioned about feeling claustrophobic at home. Although there is space, it's hard to find any alone space, any alone time. So again, very often for most people, an easy way to address that is just taking a walk outside. I'll tell you that for myself, in addition to taking a walk outside, I actually utilize my basement for that. So my basement is completely unfinished. It is like a dark dungeon of storage space. Nobody really wants to be there. But I found that even though we're not on top of it, thankfully, we're not on top of each other in my home, that happens to be like a space where nobody is there. By the way, that's where I typically work out anyway. So I sort of utilize that because I don't want to disrupt others. This way I can put on music or the YouTube playlist really loud and it's not bothering anyone. And I can sort of like just mentally, I put myself in a different space. So feeling claustrophobic is very real. Let's chat about some of the solutions that some of you mentioned. Both Jennifer and Kathy mentioned just being self-aware of your current mental state. Yes, you need to acknowledge it for yourself, and there's no shame. It's okay to realize that something frustrates you, disgusts you, annoys you, makes you angry, makes you mad, makes you feel lonely. It's okay to acknowledge it. By the way, going hand in hand by that, it's okay. It's acknowledging, Kathy mentioned this as well, acknowledging that it's okay to not be okay. Definitely. And again, you don't have to, if you don't want to, you don't have to necessarily brag about that. You don't have to like wear it on your sleeve. It's not a button that you have to put on, but just know for yourself that it's okay. Right now we're living through some insane disruptive times. And it's okay. The fact that you're feeling a little bit out of whack, out of sync with yourself because of it. And hopefully this entire experience will get resolved quickly. But if not, we all have to figure out a way for ourselves how to navigate through this insane period that we're living through, which definitely is going to go down in the history books, and definitely at some point we're going to be telling future generations how insane it was that we lived through it. But let's at least get ourselves through it without being mentally bruised or minimally mentally bruised through the entire experience. Jennifer also mentioned proactively some of the solutions that work. Proactively reaching out to friends and family, which I mentioned as well earlier. Lynette mentioned, and by the way, I have not really experienced this before, but I think it sounds so damn cool. Company organized socialization opportunities online, things like bingo, Pictionary, trivia. I am super curious. I have to look into this to see how this is done, because honestly, I would definitely do things like that, whether it's within the Salesforce ecosystem, for the Salesforce community, or within my own family, or with my own team. When I say my family, by the way, I'm one of 7 kids, so like just in terms of my siblings and their spouses and their kids, I would totally do something like that just within my own family. I'm reluctant to use the word extended family because siblings is not extended family, it's family. Anyway, Lacey mentioned don't allow your calendar just to fill up just for the sake of filling it up, because you will not have any time left to actually do anything, to complete anything whatsoever. Lacey, you are 100% right. And a lot of people do this. A lot of people sort of think of their... By the way, I see this in Salesforce also when it comes to Salesforce configuration, where people think of a to-do list and they think of their calendar synonymously, like it's one and the same, like the two can be swapped. No, not whatsoever. That's a horrible way of thinking about things, because let's say you have something like paying the utility bill, and you put that in your calendar 9 o'clock on a particular day. I'm sorry, but if a doctor that you need to see says, I have an opening at 9 o'clock on that particular day, are you actually booked or are you not booked? Like, you're completely disrupting your own calendar, your own way to manage your own time by putting tasks in the calendar. And at the same time, if you're filling up your calendar with back-to-back appointments, you can't possibly have any time left to do any tasks that you have on any list at all. So, Lacey, I'm completely with you. You need to have some time throughout the calendar, and it's okay if that means after 5 p.m., which means after 5 p.m. is when you're going to get to the things on your to-do list, which means that when you're having an interaction with someone and they ask, hey, can you follow up with, can you just upload the spreadsheet into Salesforce? Can you just update that particular field somewhere in Salesforce? You are not promising them that you're going to get it by end of day, because there's no way you're going to do that. You're in back-to-back meetings until 5 o'clock. So maybe you'll block off time after 5 p.m. just as a window, just calling it follow up on tasks, and whichever tasks you prioritize, that's what's going to be addressed. But trying to sort of put these conflicting things during the same 1 hour time slot or 8 hour time slot of the workday. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, that's a big challenge that a lot of us deal with, not only in the coronavirus world, but generally speaking. Marianne mentioned that interacting with others within the household can help a lot, just to offset a lot of the stress. I mean, because think about it, so long as you're not living alone, if you're living alone, it becomes the approach to this is very different. But if you're living with other family members, at least treat it as socializing with those other. Okay, you as humans, we need to socialize. We need to interact with others. But socializing with others, whether it is proactive or whether it is responsive because they are reaching out to you, interrupting you when you're in the middle of something, asking you a question, taking those opportunities to socialize with those that are within your household will help you mitigate some of the stress, some of the distractions, some of the loneliness that all of us are dealing with. Let's see what else we have on the list over here. Lynette and Marianne also mentioned like taking walks and being outdoors, even if it's just for a little bit. As I mentioned before, Kathy called out it's okay to not be okay. Kathy also mentioned this, setting defined work and non-work times. Super, super important. We talked about this earlier in terms of managing interactions with colleagues, as well as managing interactions with those at home. Having for yourself the set times of when you're on for work versus responsive, available to family members. It will help you put structure. It will also help set the appropriate expectations for those at work and those at home. So it's going to be very helpful all around. Jackie mentioned drinking lots of water, avoiding alcohol, and eating healthy. I can't even express how much I agree with this. By the way, I have, as it relates to drinking water, I actually, having nothing to do with coronavirus, way before coronavirus, I installed an app on my phone, as ridiculous as this sounds. I installed an app on my phone to remind me at certain intervals throughout the course of the day to just drink water to stay hydrated. I personally, I don't drink alcohol. It makes me somewhat boring. A lot of people have said, if you're like this without drinking alcohol, what the hell are you like if you were to drink alcohol? I don't know. I'd probably just sleep. I don't know. But I personally have found that eating healthy. Now, I'll put the caveat also to what I'm about to say. I love food. I can inhale a dozen donuts and I can inhale a pie of pizza before you can blink, okay? I love food. I also happen to love healthy food as much as I can fall in love with a bunch of Hershey bars that are sitting around. So for me, I found that surrounding myself with healthy options and pushing away, hiding, not allowing into the house, to the extent that I can control it, the unhealthy options helps me tremendously. So when I open the fridge, instead of seeing boxes of donuts or anything, if I see all different bright colors of oranges and apples and blueberries and blackberries and strawberries and raspberries and pineapple, I'm totally going to go for that. So sometimes it takes small little things to help get you in the right direction. But I found that also for me, eating healthy, it just makes me feel so much better throughout the course of the day. And like I said, I could just as easily inhale a dozen donuts. So I'm not someone who's like, oh yeah, I don't eat sugar. No, I do. But I try to avoid it. And it takes a little bit of effort, but you get into a routine and it works. Also, both Jackie and Andrea suggested this in terms of things that work for them, which is getting involved in other online Salesforce community gatherings. Way aside from anything that I'm doing online, many, if not all, many user groups around the world are now offering virtual meetups of some kind. Even aside from that, Salesforce is offering online learning, networking opportunities. Many of them happen to be on YouTube. Some of them are just Zoom meetings. So go to the Trailblazer community to see what's going on in terms of community groups, in terms of what Salesforce is offering. It's not a direct replacement for in-person meetups, but it definitely does help to offset a lot of the things of, feeling, a lot of things that we talked about, like feeling lonely and feeling non-productive and just connecting with others, learning something new, even if it's learning a new approach to how to manage the course of your day, managing stress, things like that, aside from learning a new feature in Salesforce. Those things can all be very helpful in terms of helping you feel productive and focused and energetic and a little bit more optimistic in terms of managing your day. Anyway, those are the things that I have on my list. Let me go ahead and take a look. I have been, by the way, I've absolutely been keeping an eye on what's going on in the chat thread over here. Let's take a look and see if there's anything that necessarily needs a response. I'm not... Oh, Lynette, thank you for sharing the link on some of the online games. I am definitely going to look at that offline to see what you have. Anyone have any, and I realize that we're at the top of the hour, but if anyone has any additional thoughts or questions or concerns, anything that you want me to address as it relates to managing mental health while working from home, go ahead and use the chat on Facebook and let me know so that I can respond to any of it. I'll just wait a little bit to see what you have. All right, so if nobody has anything, we will wrap this up. Thank you all for joining today. It was great to see you. It was great connecting with you on these things, on the topics that we talked about. Hopefully you found this helpful. I am looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And tomorrow what we're going to be talking about are some of the technology challenges and some of the home setup challenges and best practices as it relates to working from home. So thank you all, and I'm glad that you found it helpful, Marianne. I will see you all tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.